late night stream. Okay. Is my audio louder today, Eric? No green screen today. Got the actual green screen. I realized that I have never really done a video, and I get asked about this all the time, and that is, Doug, how did you deal with you leaving Christianity and being married to a Christian? I mentioned parts of it in several videos. Yeah, you get 1,000 Pine points, Jordan, even though Eric was here first. So, little background. Yeah, my wife is a evangelical Christian. She doesn't like being called a fundamentalist, and I understand why. But we both were raised more on the conservative side, upbringing. Her parents actually wore head coverings in church. That's how conservative. But in other ways, they weren't conservative because they were even open to the idea of tongues too. Well, yeah. And so I basically started leaving Christianity in my mid-30s, but I wasn't really fully out. It's a process, just like becoming a Christian's a process. This whole idea of say a certain prayer and you're immediately a Christian. Even Christians know that's not actually true. It's a process going in and it's a process going out. And the longer you've been in, the longer it takes to come out. And so I think my wife suspected that I was leaving Christianity or that I had major doubts when I was in my mid-30s. And I remember times where, she wanted to pray together as a married couple, and which is, I think, normal. Although I do wonder how many Christian men out there actually hate that, praying with their wife. I wonder if any Christian men would be honest enough to say that. So yeah, I was having doubts. She noticed. And things like praying together, I really didn't really believe prayer did anything at first. I still believe in God, but really, prayer is just about you, helping you get closer to God and having some relationship. But it really doesn't change the future. So then my idea of prayer kind of said, well, I don't really need prayer to feel better. I feel good. I'm not worried about things. I don't need things, and the things I do need, I feel I can get on my own. So why pray? So now this is the time when the Sam Harrises and Hitchens were going full swing. And I remember looking at those guys and just feeling so sorry for them. Such talented minds being wasted in foolishness. I used to talk just like almost every guest I've had on, at least parts. So sometimes I feel like I know Christians better than my glorious naked body. Oh. I don't know if I should go in order or just answer questions at random. I think I'm just going to answer questions at random. I'll talk about some of the mistakes. Someone remind me of the mistakes I made. But one question is, how have you resolved raising your kids with and without religion? I told my wife very early on that, hey, if you want to take the kids to church, go ahead. But if the kids want to stay home, and if they ask me, Dad, can we stay home from church? I'm going to say sure. So I kind of let my wife know that I think it should be up to them. This my daughter was, by the time I was fully out, my daughter was 7 or 8, and my son was 5 or 6. So they're almost too young to have their own choice. So I think a few times they did go with my wife. But to be honest, my kids never liked church. They never felt comfortable in Sunday school or church. I remember Easter Sunday having like the picture of Jesus on a slideshow, all bloodied up. My daughter freaked out. And for good reason. Like, seeing a bloody body on a slide in church, or Roman Catholics have the real thing. It's like, or an idols of it. Looking back on it, it's just horrendous. But I didn't preach atheism per se. I just, with my kids, they would ask me questions. Daddy, why aren't you going to church? I don't believe anymore. I still remember the very first time I told my son that I was an atheist. And he goes, what's that? I said, I just don't believe there's a God or any gods. Oh, okay, Daddy. I thought it was going to be a huge conversation. He just said, okay. And my daughter, she was old enough, she could start seeing changes in me. And one thing she noticed was fat daddy became thin daddy. I actually took a lot of my frustrations out in the gym. The frustrations of the challenges within the marriage. So basically, to answer your question, the kids get to choose. Boy, now the questions are coming faster. So, Brian, that was a great question. And to this day, if Grandpa and Grandma, if you're hearing this, I apologize in advance, but I really don't think Nikki and JD, my children, believe. They're very much like me. I think they're open to the idea of a deity of some sort, but my daughter even today said, what did she say? Oh, I was telling my daughter about the poof question, the drowning or the poof. And basically, I asked my daughter the same question I asked Mike Winger yesterday. Was that yesterday? Yeah. And she goes, of course you just poof them. Like, why drown babies? It's like, yes. From the mouths of children speaketh the truth. What are some bad arguments you would like to see atheists stop using? Let me think about that. And that's sort of off topic from what we're talking about. But I did say ask me anything, but I want to try to do the marriage thing first. My wife has major trouble with me losing my religion. She's a liberal Methodist, but it still really bothers her. Yeah, of course it bothers her, because you're lost, Brian. And I'm not sure, what's your wife's view on hell? I know you said she's liberal, but like when a spouse, see, a lot of Christians believe that if you leave Christianity, you will automatically cheat on your spouse. A lot of Christians believe that if you leave Christianity, that you will become a heathen and act full of debauchery and chicanery, start doing drugs and putting a disco ball up in the bedroom, and that's not the case. So with me, like I think one of the things I did right with my wife was to tell her that I love her and I'm committed to her. To me, love's a commitment. It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's being patient. It's being kind. It's choosing to do things. even when it's tough. And marriage is tough. So if marriage comes easy to people, well, is it even love then? To me, love almost has to be difficult. But maybe I'm just because of my upbringing. Respect for you and your wife, making it work. Way to go, Doug. Yeah, well, let me tell you the things I did wrong before you say you respect me. I think very early on, I just looked my wife in the eyes and I said, you just have to let me go in spiritually from your point of view and assume I will go to hell. My wife believes in hell, the literal kind, burning, gnashing of teeth. Just assume I'm going there. And that's it. That was a mistake to say, by the way. If you leave Christianity or any religion that has a hell afterlife, I wouldn't recommend you say that to your spouse. But that's what I said. So John asks, so are all your kids except your wife atheists? Well, I don't think my kids would ever call themselves atheists. They're smarter than me in that aspect. They just say that, hey, I don't really believe this. And that's it. I don't believe it. But yes, my wife is a firm believer. What was the catalyst for starting your channel? Oh, great question, Jonathan. The catalyst for starting my channel is I used to be on a platform called Blab, and it was great fun. And then that died. They took the platform down because it was costing too much money, is my guess. And Blab was my outlet. So I actually feel that I've been very clear from the very start that this channel, my channel, is for me, primarily. And it's for catharsis, to be cathartic, to pay for past mistakes, in the sense of maybe putting out there into the internet world some things I wish I would have known or thought of or have been asked. But it's a way for me to, I guess, make amends in a way for myself. I don't mean to hurt anyone with my channel, but I'm sure I have. But you know what's interesting? I don't even know if my wife has ever watched any of my videos from start to finish. But she does come in. Sometimes you hear background noise. She does come in here. And in the early days of my channel, I used to really quiet down and actually change what I was about to say because of her presence in the room. Now I just say what I want to say, for the most part. Do you think you can bring back your old choir boy vocals and sing something? No. Do you ever see a scenario where your wife comes over to the dark side? No. I really don't, and I'm okay with that. I really think some people need it. And if anything, they need it for the community aspect and for the comfort aspect. See, from my wife's perspective, and I bet you there's a huge percentage of the Christian population who are like this. And these are the people who would never watch my channel or any atheist theological type channels. Any problem that they might, or question or doubt that they might have, they will, for a few minutes or whatever, say, oh, but so-and-so, a respected apologist or pastor, he's looked into it. And and I heard something, he said, yeah, okay, I'm fine. And he's smart, so I don't even have to think about it anymore. I'm done. That's, I think, how a lot of Christians operate. And I think even Christian apologists would admit this. This is why they're trying to get more apologetics out there, is because they're just embarrassed by how little Christians know about what they believe. And by the way, I support apologetics. If you're a pastor or preacher or apologetics, do more. As much to double, triple, quadruple your efforts. Please do. Because I actually think it puts more information out there. Do you ever see a scenario, Ruckus asks, do you ever see a scenario where your wife comes? Oh, I just asked that. Okay, good question, Ruckus. For atheists, what would you say about starting romantic relationships with Christians? No, don't. No. And Christians, I give you the same advice. Don't start a relationship. This one verse in the Bible I agree with. Don't be unequally yoked. There's a lot of fish in the sea. Why pile on with the problems of this world? Although in the United States, there's so few atheist women out there. I feel sorry for atheist guys who are single. Rachel, if you're an atheist woman, you got the pick of the litter. The general stereotype of how ex-Christians became like that is based on actual things, because after leaving faith, everyone has a different way of dealing with it. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. But I love my wife. I'm committed to my wife. But I also, at the same token, I am not responsible for her happiness, at least in the short run. Like, her happiness is up to her. Now, of course, I could do things to make her unhappy, but if those things are what I believe, and or what I don't believe, if that's what's making her unhappy, that doesn't mean I need to change just to make her happy. Have you gone to a random Easter Christmas service to appease your family? No, I have not. I am the type of person who, if a person in my family wants me to go to a Easter service and I say no, and they get mad at me or disappointed me, it doesn't bother me at all. People are free to be disappointed in me. That's okay. Now, I'm not going to be purposely rude to people or anything, but if I'm asked to do something and I say no, and that makes them sad, then they have the right to be sad. And it doesn't bother me. Have you gone to that was Eric's. Brian, how does your wife resolve her belief that she can or will be happy in heaven when her husband is hell? Good question. You'd have to ask her. I think she struggles with that. But I think her, like many other Christians, believe that hell is a perfect place where there is no sorrow in that sense, that will be wiped away. Which brings up another problem. Is that really you in heaven if you can't remember the tragedies of earth and feel it in a negative way? Isn't that just a Mary Poppins avatar of yourself in heaven? And who wants that? But great question, Brian. She must really love you to put up with your heathen ways. Yeah, she does. Well, I'm a great dad. I'm a great father. I'm funny. I'm a great dancer. And she knows that she knows I'm not crazy. She knows I'm not going to do crazy things. She knows I'm committed. She knows that I'm stable. In a lot of ways, I think I'll just speak for my wife. That's what she wants. So she really didn't lose anything other than that I don't go along with her to church. She can't pray with me anymore, really. Well, I guess those are big things, but to be honest, I don't think my wife actually wants me to go to church with her anymore. She knows that if someone asks me a question and I give an answer, or any type of dialogue that a typical average Christian would have with me in church, it's going to cause some doubt in them. Dumb question. Oh, Frozen Sea. Dumb question. No, it's not. This is not a dumb question. Doug, are you saying that apologetics is a good deconversion tool? Yes. Because apologetics is only going to be helpful, like, from their point of view, for people who are never going to leave anyhow. It's just for them to rationalize and justify, help them not to feel stupid. That's what apologetics is really all about. It's to defend what you believe, give reasons for what you believe. Someone who's doubting at least a little bit, let me put it this way. Someone who's more on the, I don't even know how to phrase it. Yeah, I'll just use the word doubt. Someone who's doubting more than, let's say, the average Christian, apologetics is going to do the reverse than what these Christians think it's going to do, because they're going to actually explore things that they never had even thought of in the first place, and it's going to cause more doubt. So I think what I'm doing and what apologetics are doing, I think we're almost in the same line. And as far as raising doubt. But there's some people who are just going to believe no matter what. It's just, maybe I shouldn't be so deterministic, but do you believe your Christian, John Marcus asked, do you believe your Christian past has influenced on your person today, like the habits of following morals, even if they came about natural means? I think the culture I was raised in really impacts me more than the religion. Like, I was raised on a farm, hardworking, personal responsibility. I expect bad things to happen to me every day. And when they don't, I'm happy. Like, that's how I view life. So life is unfair. I accept that. Technically, I've reproduced already in evolutionary. If you look at history, people didn't live much longer than 40. I'm 47. I should be dead. It's technology that's keeping me alive. So every day is a bonus. I love life. Every day I wake up in the morning, I can do things. Do you miss Manitoba? Were you ever a Blue Bomber fan? Ruckus knows who the Blue Bombers are. Good for you, Ruckus. I have been to a few games. I never was a big Blue Bomber fan, but will say I agree with Kramer from Seinfeld that the CFL is way more exciting than the NFL. And if you don't believe me, just watch a few CFL games, because they only have 3 downs. It's a passing game, not a running game. Oh yeah, Wild Heart. Good point. I am modest, Doug. Hey, I take pride in my modesty. But as far as how my Christian past has influenced me today, I, in a lot of ways, feel I'm more moral than I was as a Christian. Because I see people as people, not those who walk in darkness or walk in the light. Oh, what a horrible. I guess it's not horrible in the sense if you're making Star Wars movies, but do you find yourself inadvertently helping your family or others understand things in the Bible from time to time? I don't talk to my wife about the Bible. I made my wife a promise that I would not ask her anything unless she asked me first, and she doesn't ask me things. And my kids are still a little too young to care about the Bible that much. I like your Columbo approach with your guests. Well, thank you. Yes. And I like that you use the word Columbo and not SE. It's amazing how I get flack. I'm an atheist and I ask questions, therefore I'm a street epistemologist. Now, I admit I use street epistemology in the same way as guys like Reed Nicewander and Anthony Magnabosco. But you've heard me say to people, like yesterday, I said, if you answer this way, that I call BS on you. I'll call it the way I see it. I am willing to offend people sometimes. I'm willing to call someone an idiot sometimes. But usually I will only do that if I have had a previous conversation with them and there's some type of relationship there. There's a little bit of social credit. Like to someone who I'm talking for the first time, no, I'm not. I'm going to be more careful. But you know what? I think Christians appreciate that. They appreciate me calling them silly or an idiot sometimes, because they're saying, oh, okay, I know Doug's not lying to me. Doug turned out okay in spite of religion. I can tell you some bad stories of things I've done in my past because I was a Christian. And I mean it, because I believed in the propositions of Christianity. I don't know if I want to go into it here. Kahneman Nguyen. Do you think that doing the greater good, meaning the receiver gets benefits, good doer may suffer some harm, is harder without a belief in a higher power? No, not for me anyhow. I actually feel more joy in my life doing the right thing because I wanted to, rather than because I wanted a God to look down on me and smile and say, "Good, well done, good and faithful servant. Thank you, Daddy." It's like, I'm a grown man, and it's the concept of Christianity. I really believe that Christians just want their Abba Father to be so proud of them, so happy. It's time to, I think it's time to grow out of that mentality and say, no, I have a choice. I can do A or B in this situation. I'm going to think about it, and what would I want to have happen to myself? Think about empathy, compassion. In other words, if someone drops a $100 bill in front of you and they don't notice they dropped it, pick that $100 bill up, poke them on the back, say, "Excuse me, ma'am, you dropped this." And I tell you, that will feel so good, even if there's no God watching or anybody else watching. What are some of your favorite atheist authors? To be honest, I don't read a lot of atheist authors. I read mostly things I disagree with. And when I read, I say listen or read. I almost never touch paper. But, Hitchens was amazing. Doug, what's your favorite PineCreek video? Oh, what's your wife's favorite PineCreek video? And Alex B., are you Canadian? Because you spelled favorite the correct way. What's my wife's favorite PineCreek video? Well, I really don't think she's watched any of them. I think she watched my very first one with Steve Giles. Steve Giles? Yeah. Who was a guest that actually compelled you towards belief? Which guest actually made me think more towards belief? None. And I'm not saying that the closest I can say is maybe if there's a theist out there who just believes in like a general nebulous deity type God and says, it can help people, society, if they believe in it, maybe I can see it for pragmatic reasons. But other than that, now that's not to say that there hasn't been theists who have made great points to me in the past. I think almost every guest I've had, I will say at least some guests I've said, hey, that's a great point. And I try to make an effort to say that. Yeah, I agree with you. Or, yeah, this is a good point. How do you handle dinner prayers? It seems so ingrained in our culture. There's no dinner prayers in our family other than my wife. So if we go to a restaurant, my wife and I and my two kids, we sit down, order our food. The food comes. Me and my kids will just start eating, and my wife will bow her head for about 10 seconds and then raise it. So maybe that's rude of us that we just start eating, but One time as a joke, I think I did this. And it wasn't when I was an atheist. I was still kind of a Christian. But we were all bowing our heads to pray, and we just assumed that my dad would pray, but he never did. And then after a little while, I just said, 10. And I raised my head, and everybody laughed. Do your wife's church friends know you're an atheist? Yes, Brian. Do they try to reconvert you? No, they don't. The people who know me well, they don't even try. No. Why is that, I wonder? What do you admire most and least about Mike Winger? Ask John Marcus. Well, Mike is one of the guys that when the previous question is anybody made me think. He's made some good points in the past. Like, let me see if the last time when he was on, like I thought that when he brought up the issue of the people in the military having no doubt, and I really am far off. Like, I was raised a Mennonite pacifist in Canada, so I don't even have a perception of what that must be like to go into battle with and have to kill someone with, like, and the doubts that they face or don't face, and I thought that was a good point when I brought up the ISIS thing. I won't talk about what I don't like about him. PineCreek, MHQ, do you think mythicists have a valid argument that Jesus did not exist? Yes. Now, I don't agree with them. I'm still like over the 50% mark. But it is absolutely crazy to me that the very first writings we have about Jesus mention nothing about his earthly ministry, mentions nothing about his miracles, mentions nothing about Mary and Joseph, mentions nothing about the disciples. It never uses the word disciples by name. Like, and it boggles my mind that as a Christian, I didn't even realize these things. And keep in mind, I think this is a big misconception. Mythicists, most of them, they have a range of probabilities. So none of them would say, oh, it's 100% certain that Jesus didn't exist. Like even Richard Carrier says it's like he puts it at around a third that Jesus did exist. So a mythicist is just someone saying that's more likely than not that he did not exist. One of my favorite shows was yours with that apologetic Dr. White, I think. Oh, the Christian Challenge? Yeah, that was fun. Every time I watch that back, when I get a comment, I get notified. I sometimes watch pieces of it, and I was high strung on that one. I think that's the one you're talking about, where he actually wasn't. I wasn't talking with him. I was just responding to something he said live. One thing, like someone else is talking about Mike, that he didn't want to answer that poof question. Did you notice at the very end, and I really thought about this, but at the very end, just before he left, I said, I'll give you the last word. And I should have just gone off after that. I was on like too long, venting or cooling down. But he gave like a shotgun blast of points. But you as an atheist can't do this, can't explain that, don't have basis for this, blah, 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 blah. And I very quickly, in about 10 seconds, I'm thinking in my head, do I want to address this or just let it go? And I let it go because I think he needed that. He really needed that, to say that. Because I think, especially morality, that's something a lot of Christians, that's one of the main reasons that having that basis for morality is why they're Christian. And the questions I was asking him, you notice how he always wanted to take that to morality, even though I was asking him about his preference, like just what he would prefer God do in that situation. He could not separate my question from morality, and that told me that it was putting extreme friction on what he would do compared to what his God actually did, and it didn't feel good. Our Iron Charlotte, do you know that there are verses in the Bible that says Christians cannot pray in public or proselytize? Yeah, I know that. This should put an end to the debate about the matter. Yeah, whenever you see Christians pray on TV or in the middle of a football stadium or, yeah, I always think of that verse. Go in your closet and pray. Hi, Brenda. What do you think of Ray Comfort? I actually think he's funny. I think if he was in this room with me right now, we'd probably laugh and have a good time. Now, of course, I think he's a little bit crazy, but yeah, he would make me smile. Real Jingy, at the end of a deep and thought-filled moment of silence, just say, and cut. That's right. Yeah. I'd rather convince them, but oh well, you can't win everyone. Tim Gore says, I've been binge watching James White videos lately. Have I lost my mind? Well, it depends on why you're watching them, I guess. Any more questions? What are your favorite philosophers? Who are my favorite philosophers? I don't have any favorite philosophers. Socrates. Someone who once said that you never ask someone, an adult, what their favorite thing is. I think it was, yeah, well, never mind. Yet he says you're the one always coming back to morality. Yeah. I think Mike Winger is truly a good person, but you know that famous Hitch reference, religion makes people do bad things. Well, you know what? One thing, I still don't know what to make of it, but in his video that I critiqued, he mentioned taking the atheist or the skeptical questions or attacks. He said you take it, you squash it, you kill it, and you parade the dead body for your fellowship to see. I don't know if you guys caught that. And I was talking to one of my subscribers about this afterwards, and I remember hearing that and going, well, wait a minute, why? What's with this language? Viewing atheist attacks, killing it, parading the dead body, and then with this like weird smile and laugh to go with it. I think he did on purpose to show that, this is not literal, but still, it was really eerie to me. And by the way, if I ask questions with the purpose of deconversion, then it's not an attack. But if it's for the purpose of deconversion or increasing doubt greatly, then it is an attack. That's the bottom line. Why no longer go to church sermons like these? Yes, I guess I haven't done a formal one. But Brian, to be honest, I can pump out videos via live stream. So if I do another one of those, it'll probably be live stream. It's just too much work to sit and edit. I'd rather risk making mistakes and do it live, and then just apologize for those mistakes later and say, yeah, I goofed up there. J.E. asks, what are your thoughts, experiences with psychedelics? None. I'm a virgin, other than nicotine and caffeine. Would you consider trying DMT? Maybe when I'm 80. I went to the optometrist lately, and I have very high pressure in my eyes, so there's a small chance I might actually have to what do they call it? What do the kids call it? Smoke joints, doogies, marijuana. I don't know. I might get a medical marijuana, but then the only way that works is if you you constantly have to smoke marijuana or take marijuana to keep that pressure in your eyes down. What do you think of Kent Hovind defending Second Amendment and gun rights? Does the American Second Amendment apply today? Oh, yeah. I purposely avoid politics, at least directly. But other than to say, I strongly believe in a separation of church and state. Now I'm thinking about this whole atheists are immoral and you can't be good without God might just be projection. Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. Alligators. Bible Reloaded bashes Christians and mocks them a lot, even if they try a type of epistemology. What do agree or would side with Christians on opposing them? Do I agree or... ridicule, mocking, bashing, I think in a lot of cases does more harm than good. I think sometimes it's just some good fun, but yeah, I think my bottom line is people should take responsibility for their own emotional well-being. So if you're a Christian and you don't like that stuff, then don't watch it. Doobies, yeah. How can I possibly be a guest on your show? I don't know. I prefer theists over atheists, but I have had a few atheists on. So become a Christian, Ruckus, and start a megachurch, and then you're welcome to come on my channel. Oh, everybody's mentioning names of different types of marijuana. Bombs, doobie, sheesh. Is it hash? No, hashish? What's that? Is there a way to contact me other than here? Yes, I'm a terrible marketer. If you go to my About tab on my YouTube page is my email address. And I have a Facebook page called PineCreek Doug. I'm on Twitter as PineCreek, except it's a 1 instead of an I for the first letter. P1 instead of PI. At PineCreek. Where else can you get a hold of me? That's it. Facebook, Twitter, and here. Is the marriage tough or is it pleasant? It's pleasant right now. It was tough in the early days, Rob, when I first left Christianity. But, yeah, I often get asked advice on how to handle things. I would just say just love your spouse, reassure them that you're committed to them. But on the same token, say, look, I'm not going to just force myself to do certain things or believe certain things just because you want me to. Young King Dave just died. Rest in peace. So what other mistakes did I make? I told my wife first, kids second. My parents didn't know till maybe, they suspected, but they really didn't know till maybe only a year ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. What would your reaction be if Christian Judgment Day actually happened? My reaction would be exactly what it would be now. I would just say, okay, I was wrong. I'll take my punishment like a man. Or reward. Maybe I'll be rewarded. Who knows? Maybe only atheists go to heaven if there's a heaven for realizing all earthly religions were wrong. Do you consider yourself more of a rationalist or an empiricist or some other epistemology? I'm a simple guy, actually. Let me put it this way. I think you're going to say I'm an empiricist, but if someone makes a prediction and it comes true over and over again, I trust that guy. If someone makes a prediction and it only comes true half the time, I don't trust that guy as much. If someone makes predictions and it never comes true, I don't trust that guy. I think that's a pretty good epistemology. And so I do think having a model of reality and that can make predictions and it comes true, it's pretty good epistemology. Now, I do realize that there's some things that don't work that way. But how do the Reformed philosophers or Reformed epistemologists put it? Religious epistemologists. They put it as Reformed theology. They'll say, yeah, defeaters. You got to look at the defeaters for what you believe. And embrace doubt. Don't be scared of it. Would you ever consider having me, very, very loosely, Anderson, on your show? Ruckus, are you really Steve Anderson? Have you ever felt like you were suppressing the truth? What does it mean to suppress the truth anyway? No. I think the first step to being on the road to truth is to admit that you could be wrong. And I mean just not hypothetically. I mean like you seriously could be wrong. Now, some things I think we can get very close on, like the effects of gravity, we understand very well. That when you drop things, they'll fall towards the earth. That we can say we have knowledge about. But things about the spiritual world and, so many other things. Could it be true? Possibly, but can we say we know? What would be needed to prove Christianity? For me personally, it would be an amazing miracle, but that wouldn't prove it. That would just increase my confidence. Amputee getting his limb back. That's a good start. In the name of Jesus, not the name of Vishnu. Let me move this over. I got it on screen 1 instead of screen 2. Jordan Peterson also redefined faith to say that not a very good epistemology, Doug. That's an adductive argument which is unjustified. Okay. I thought your reservations to be on one of those hangouts with so many people on it was very fair. It's chaotic and not fun listening to when everyone throws tires on that fire. Yeah, I don't like hangouts. I especially don't like hangouts where there's more than 2 people or 3. But once you get like 4, 5, 6, I like to see people's faces. I don't like seeing screens pop in and out. Yeah. When I put other people's need above my own, what the motivation almost always comes from my intuition, the right thing to do. Do you think doing good based on an argument from fairness is better? I think the argument from fairness actually derives from what you call intuitions. And I think evolution explains why. But I do think there's level 1 and level 2 type processing of those reasons to behave certain ways. Some of it's just you don't even have time to think about it. For example, you're at a cafe, you're at a restaurant, and you see a child on a high chair and it's about to fall. You don't stop to think, should I jump to catch that baby or just let the baby fall? No, almost instinctively you just, boom, you catch that child. But on other behaviors, you actually have to think through things, say, should I do this or should I do that? Does your wife feel betrayed since you married her as a believer and then did a 180 into atheism? Yeah, I think so, a little bit. But I think she realizes that, like life happens, people change. If so, how did she come to terms with it? Well, as a Christian, she comes to terms with it by praying and through fellowship. with other believers. How old were you when you started to have doubts? 35, Rob. Did you approach your church members about them? Oh, yeah, all the time. And remember, I've been in probably 10 different denominations from different points of view over my 30 years of being a Christian. How did they answer your questions? Some well, some not so well. But there's some questions that they just, like for example, the question of do you believe a resurrection based on textual evidence of the sort we have in the Gospels? The only thing the Christian can say to that is, well, yeah, of course. But what else are you compelled to believe in after that? What got the ball rolling with your doubt? I would say seeing myself in the third person. I don't know how many times Christians ask me questions or present me with information thinking that I don't know this stuff already. I'm not talking about very esoteric stuff. I'm talking about basic stuff. But then when I ask them, well, what do you think my response to that is? And they have no clue. It's like, I challenge Christians to become the best atheists as far as role playing as they can be. If anything, it's going to help you strengthen your faith. You should know the answer to every question you ask an atheist before you even ask it. Like you should have, okay, this atheist is either going to say this, or this, and then I'm going to ask why, and then they're going to say either this, or that, and then I'm going to ask why, and then they're going to say that. Like basically with every Christian I talk to, I got mapped out. Very rarely will I be surprised of the answer. And I have mapped out the whole tree almost from the first question, where it's going to go. Hey, JD. How do your friends deal with your atheistic approach? I've lost a lot of my friends, to be honest. Let's see. One of my close friends, the first thing he said to me when he found out is, Doug, you do realize that you're probably sending your kids to hell because you're the father, the head of the home, the spiritual leader. So that's on you, Doug. That's a pretty nice thing to say right out of the gate. But most of my friends don't even talk about it. They don't even. I'm trying to think. Say out of 10 close friends where I live, maybe one has actually even bothered to ask why. I think they kind of watched me through that process of leaving, so they kind of knew why. Also, are your business relationships affected as being an atheist? No. I have not met 90% of the clients that I work with. I haven't met them face to face. In today's world, you don't need to see people. So if you know how to use the internet, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, pink, yellow. Doesn't matter what you look like. You can make money. And yeah. I sometimes wonder, like, would anybody even care? I really don't think so, if they found out I was an atheist. I think some of them already do. Doug, why is it that I cringe and facepalm 99% of the Christians you speak about? For example, your close friend telling that your kids will go to hell because you... well, because maybe... What country are you in? Are you Australian, Rob? Or New Zealand? I forget where you're from. But in the United States, you got to remember, 1 out of 3 Christians are like the Mike Wingers. Very conservative. And then 1 out of 3 are, what I call the nuanced Christians. It's all about love. And then the others, somewhere in the middle. What do you think of zeitgeist film being shared as an actually argument against theism? No, I think that's a horrible thing to do, to use. Not to say that everything in it is wrong. I'm sure I don't remember it, to be honest, but I think the basics is, so much of this whole idea of doubt with Christianity and apologetics and the historicity, really, once you're to the point of having an epistemology that you just don't believe a huge claim based on textual evidence, everything melts from there. Like, the core propositions just melt. They just go away. It's like, I have a cousin who says, no, Jesus didn't rise from the dead in bodily form. No, that didn't happen. And of course he means like he wasn't there and he doesn't know in the same sense. He knows that things will fall to the ground when you're like, oh, but it's like, you don't believe things like that just because an old book says so. Like, it's really not more complicated than that. It really isn't. I actually lost a couple of clients in relationship with neighbors when they found out. Oh, they're lost ruckus, I guess. I find that most American Catholics are rather easygoing about personal beliefs these days. Yes, Blue Streak, Roman Catholics are much different than Protestants. But they still believe as crazy as stuff as the Protestants do. Don't, at least the practicing Roman Catholics. Yeah, they still believe crazy, crazy things. Okay, good night, alligators. You seem that you would be a Woody Allen film fan. Oh, yeah, I think he is very witty and funny. Ever since becoming an atheist, have you found difficulty with statements such as, I care about you from the bottom of my heart? I've never said stuff like that, even when I was a Christian. Do I say this? How much do I open up? Yeah, I think feelings do more harm than good, to be honest. To me, the best way to show love is to do something for someone who really needs for it to be done. Doug, what if you were, at the start of your walk, entrenched with proper academic, peer-reviewed Christian scholarship that acknowledged the science, pro-evolution, and ancient Near Eastern studies? What if? It gets back, Rob, to what I said earlier. It's really not that complicated. And if you really think about that one paragraph you wrote, if that's what you need to be a solid Christian, something's wrong. Something's wrong with your God if that's what it takes. I think all you have to do is ask yourself this question, Rob. Is it good to believe a man rose from the dead, walked on water, changed water into wine, all these things, just because an old book says so? That's all you have to ask yourself, really. Like, is that really good enough evidence for you? Do you think if Jesus did exist, he was possibly a Jew that converted to Zoroastrianism? I don't know about that, John. I think there's a lot of similarities between the Jesus of the Gospels and the Essene sect of Judaism. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was an apocalyptic type preacher out of the Essene movement. But who knows? There was a lot of saviors at that time, or people expecting a savior, a Messiah at that time. You ask Christians that, they'll even tell you that. Because of Daniel 9, they thought, that period of time is when they thought the Messiah would come. Yeah. What the Roman Catholic is just as crazy as the Protestants, but the Protestants keep forgetting that they came from the Roman Catholics. Like, that's the first church. Were you a young earth creationist back when you're Christian? No, I never was. But I was like a lot of Christians where I'll just say, it really doesn't matter to me that much. But the earth is old. Do you believe David wrote the book of the Psalms, or did another author fabricate his passion for God? That's a good question. I'm not sure on that one. I guess, and it could be both, right? Maybe David wrote some of it and someone else wrote some of it or added to it. Oh, I just thought of this. Actually, this is a bit of Hunter Bailey. Oh, hi, Hunter. Yeah, it has been a long time. I don't know if I want to do this, but I just saw something really interesting today. And these are things that Rob, I don't even think you know about this, but maybe you do. You know this, let's see if I can screen capture it. Okay, I'm not gonna watch your questions for the next couple of minutes, so. But today, I find this fascinating. I don't speak Hebrew. I don't read Hebrew. But you know how a lot of Christians believe, well, the prophecies are great evidence, great evidence that there's a God. But if you read Isaiah, and Isaiah 9 is a simple one. It's a short one, and it's one that a lot of Christians believe is a prophecy. For unto us a child is born, a son is given, the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Did you know that in the Hebrew, it's in the past tense? Now, if you ask a Christian, if this was in the past tense, is it still a prophecy? They would have to say no. The prophecy goes away if this is in the past tense. Like if I was to read this, to us a child was born, to us a son was given, and the government was upon his shoulder, and his name was called. If I read it that way, like it's pretty reasonable to say this is not a prophecy. But yet that's how it reads in the Hebrew. And the sad thing is, none of this matters to a Christian. Like, they'll just say, oh, but my apologist guy, what's his name, who's a former Jew, yeah, he looked at that. I don't have to think about it. That's what it always ends up being. But if you actually go to, like, if you type in your search engine, like, online Hebrew Bible, and actually bring up the characters, and I did that today, and I brought up this. I don't know if you can see it, but Genesis 4:26, where it uses some of the same words in Hebrew. And it says, to Seth also a son was born. Okay, so this is past tense. This is good, okay? Genesis 4:26. To Seth also a son was born. Past tense, right? Now look at the character for was born. Now look at the character for is born. And some translations have shall be born. They're the same character. And I don't have to know Hebrew to be recognized, have pattern recognition. And I did this for all those words. Let's see, will be called. Let's see if I can find the. Oh, yeah. Look at this. On that so-called prophecy, will be called. Look at the Greek letters, whatever. Now look at it in Genesis when it's clearly past tense. These are the same characters, same words. Now the question that the Christian has to ask themselves is, okay, is this just a mistranslation? And if so, do you just now throw that prophecy away? Do you somehow harmonize it in a way to say, oh, but no, it really means this when you look at this, this, and this? Like, at some point, like, how many of these little things do you have to chip away at your faith before you just say, just let it go already? Like, why are you working so hard to keep this belief? Did that make sense what I just did? No, I gotta find my screen where you guys are at. Am I still live? But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And, these are things that only, it's because of the internet. You can just very quickly look these things up. Anybody, if there's anybody who's Jewish in the chat, let me know. And who can read Hebrew. Like, what's the apologetic, what's the apologetic for that? I tried even to find that. Like, how do you fix that problem? Like, Jews clearly say this is past tense. Jews who read Hebrew. So, hi Doug, is Christianity now in decline in the U.S.? Yes, big time. It's probably, I actually tried to do the regression analysis on it. I think it's probably 2050. It'll be under 50%. Yeah, I'm open mind, just asked that. I would say by 2050, the nones, N-O-N-E-S, will be the majority. And the reason for it is Christianity is just not needed. Because not only do people not believe it, but even pragmatically, it's not needed. And this is why I often ask the question, like, what's the worst that could happen? Hebrew tenses are funky. Yeah, I agree. But when you have situations where you have the exact same characters, and in one translation it's a past tense and one's the future, then you got to start asking your question, now, are translators putting in the future with an agenda in mind? Have you had any nasty attacks from a subject of any of your videos? I've been threatened to be sued. That's probably the worst. But other than that, no. Name calling, but that doesn't bother me. Are you allowing people to join you live? Hunter, remind me, do I know you from Blab Days? I think so, right? You have me questioning whether I really know you or not now. What's the strongest incentive to believe eternal life or ultimate justice? For me, if I had to choose one, I would say ultimate justice. I don't desire eternal life, not at all. Honestly, who wants to live forever? That's terrible. But from a Christian perspective, what I would guess, I'm going to sound sexist, but I think women would say eternal life and men would say ultimate justice on average. Go contact Caption Christianity for a chat. Yeah. PineCreek, the net translation, my favorite, translate Isaiah 9 in the past tense, so you're not wrong. Oh, I love to be told I'm not wrong. I want to be very clear. I think Judaism suffers from poor epistemology just like Christianity does. But I feel for the Jews in the sense of Christianity just, especially Paul, just decimated, just killed things in the Torah. It's terrible. If I was a Jew, I'd be mad for what the New Testament did to the Old Testament. I know you have a thick skin, as you noted before. Having said that, what is the worst comments that have come your way? Worst mean that have actually impacted me? None. It's just the opposite. It's like, and I use this myself. kill them with kindness. If you want to impact me, be reasonable and nice. I think most humans would appreciate that. So if, and don't bloviate. But I'll try to answer your question. What's the worst comment? Oh, I remember now, but it wasn't on YouTube. It was on Blab. You know, my sister is paralyzed, and a Christian accused me of making up that story that I have a paralyzed sister just to get sympathy, and so Christians would feel sorry for me and listen to what I would have to say, or something like that. I forget exactly. But I was really upset with that. Like, how low do you think I have to be to make up a story of my sister dying of MS and completely paralyzed just to push atheism on people or stuff like that? Like, and I talked to this guy face to face on Blab after that happened. JD, I don't know if you're still here, but did you listen to that? Yeah, I gave him a piece of my mind, and he actually apologized to me after that. What do you think of inspiring philosophy? I get some of my videos from that channel, but I could have got them from other places as well. I think the same old, same old. It's apologetics. It's starting with the conclusion and trying to justify it. It's poor epistemology. It's believing things for big claims just because a book says so. Now, a lot of inspiring philosophy does things other than Christianity, like all the moral arguments, first cause arguments, fine-tuning arguments. Those are not Christian arguments, and any apologist who tells you that is not a real apologist. They know this. They know that all those arguments, philosophical type arguments, really are not Christian arguments. They're deistic type arguments. They do bridge them together, but you still need that bridge to pull them together. Doug, what do you think is more effective? Make the person doubt the source of a claim or doubt the claim itself? What more effective? Doubt the source or doubt the claim itself? I think it's easier to doubt the claim itself. Because even if someone you love and trust, if the claim is just so ridiculous, even then you're going to doubt it, right? So I think the claim itself is easier, but both are important. I wish I could see your old demos from Blab days. I actually have a couple on my hard drive. One where I was talking to a Muslim lady who I think actually ended up leaving Islam. Hi, Doug. When you were a Christian, did you have an excuse for not following some of the Old Testament laws? Oh, yeah, same excuse that most Christians give today. That was the Old Covenant. Now we're under the New Covenant, they would say. If you could hit a religion doesn't and never existed button, would you? Yes. I think Christianity and Islam. I would hit those buttons. I think there are far more, there are better religions out there that, Christianity is so broad though. Like there's certain sects of Christianity I would not hit the button on. Like the Quakers and the Amish and the Mennonites, like they're not going to kill anybody. Are you and McClatchy on talking terms? We have not talked since that last episode. How do I do street epistemology? You got to find a street first, and then you got to epistemologize. Street epistemology is just basically asking questions like, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? What would change your mind? Is it testable? That's it. It's actually pretty simple. It's actually, unless for the most part, it's boring to watch. Unless you got a really crazy belief. Do you think the Vatican will close and all churches will be converted to 24-hour community centers and homeless shelters? Not in my lifetime. But what would take their place? Secular humanism? Or maybe just call it compassionism? Do you ever lose it inside when the apologetics and mental gymnastics and dishonest feelings responses and interviews? I don't know. I don't think I've ever lost it big time on my channel. Because I feel if I lose my temper, I've lost everything. I've lost credibility. Yeah. Now, I do think it's okay to have a spirited conversation, but I don't really think I've ever lost control. I'd love to learn SE. I feel it would help me in science communication. Problem is I'm so busy science communication. Yeah. Check out, people in this chat, check out Blue Streak Science's channel. He's all about science. I really wish I could do more science stuff. But it's hard to actually get guests. I don't know how you do it, JD. McClatchy he loves Jesus. It's, at the essence, he believes because he loves Jesus. I highly recommend SE, guys. It's made me a better person. Yeah, I do think the positives of SE are just amazing. The problem is, though, because it is effective, just if I'm an atheist and I ask questions, I'm automatically doing street epistemology. And like you saw Mike Winger the other day, it's just like, it's almost the walls come up immediately. So I've almost taken the approach of, I'm okay with laying all my cards on the table. If a Christian wants me to say, Doug, is your goal here to lead me to hell? If they want me to say it, sure. Okay. Yeah, my goal here is to lead you to hell. Now, can we talk? Or are you going to run away? So if someone comes on my channel and is as a guest, and if I sense they're being defensive and are very closed, and it's the first time, I'll be pretty much street epistemology like, or as the other guy said, Columbo tactics like, just stick to questions. If it's a person who I've had many conversations with, it's more dialogue. And if it's even someone who I've built up a lot of credit with, I'll tell them straight to their face I think they're nuts when they're nuts. My point being, what if worse religions take their place? Yeah, good point, Ryan. That's always a scary thing. And just because someone leaves a religion doesn't mean they're going to behave better. And this is why I've actually told people stay a Christian. I actually think they need it. And even though that sounds bad, they themselves admit that. Yes, I need Jesus. Like, yeah, and you do too, you know? Like, to be a Christian, you have to admit that you need something. You need the sin problem cleansed. You need Jesus to save you from your sins. That what you believe is foolishness in the eyes of the world. You have to admit all these things. Or you can just ignore the Bible, I guess. We'll have a spirited conversation next time, Doug. Have you ever dressed up as the devil on Halloween just to poke fun? No. With street epistemology like you described and planting the seed of doubt, is it hard to not hold to... Yeah. I think that the way most people define knowledge, truth, is wrong, to be honest. And so when I say I know something, I don't say that that has to be 100% certain and no chance of being wrong. That knowledge exists is a belief that exists in like varying degrees of probability. So maybe I call myself a probabilitarianismist. I don't know. But if you want to get to what you absolutely can only say you really, really, really know, and that's your own consciousness, sure. You seem to be one of the most honest people in this realm. It's a pleasure to tune in. Oh, thank you, Ruckus. Loonsberry, drop the rhetoric and maybe Doug will talk to you. Keep it real. Well, I do have one question for you, Eric, and that is, did you seek out opposing views to Christianity as you were deciding whether or not to be a Christian? All knowledge is provisional. Yes, JD. I think that's pretty fair. Loonsberry, you're not supposed to proselytize in public, especially not on Doug's channel. No, it's okay, Iron Charlotte here. If Eric doesn't proselytize to me, like the Bible says, the New Testament says that you should pray in private in your closet, but doesn't it also commands that you should evangelize, you should preach the good news to all nations. In a way, by Eric being here, is saying that he loves me. Eric loves me, this I know. He would actually have to hate me if, in his worldview, for him to say, I don't care about PineCreek, let him die in his non-belief. How, from his point of view, how much does he have to hate me to say that? This is exactly why I think Christians should be evangelizing more, doing more apologetics. They should be knocking on doors. They should... like, why, Christians, if you're listening to this, why aren't you doing that? Maybe it's because you don't really believe it. And really, Christians should be thanking PineCreek for raising doubt, causing deconversions, getting rid of the riffraff, the chaff that's weighing the church down. And I want a piece of the 10%. That was a joke. That's Peter. Verse in Timothy contradicts that. If hell or separation from God is true, and if hell is really bad and being separated from God is really bad, and if having God in your life can make you a better father, mother, a better child, obedient child, and help society to avoid all the problems, then Eric should be, every person he meets, he should be telling about Jesus Christ. Tithe to PineCreek. The fact that Christians in the United States are not evangelizing tells me they really don't believe it. They're just posers. They say they believe, but they really don't. Technically, every Christian I meet on the street, if somehow we upon a conversation, during that course of the conversation, if they really think what they believe is true, during that conversation, they should ask me if I know Jesus personally. Shouldn't they? Yeah, Eric, I understand. I'm really not joking when I say that. From the Christian point of view, they should, especially if you're a Calvinist, Christians should support what I'm doing, because I am providing questions that will help you research and be better solidified in what you believe. And number two, those who end up leaving probably weren't real Christians to begin with, so I'm just releasing a burden to the church. Yeah, that 22-year-old preacher, I'm not sure if he's legit or not, or if he's just looking for internet fame. That happens a lot. Why do preachers get mad at you, Eric? Doug, would you have faked it and not told your wife you no longer believed if you could go back? Oh, that's an interesting question. What if she was someone who couldn't have handled it? Yeah. Wow, that's a great question. So what Silhouette's asking is, let's say I had a reasonable expectation that my wife would have had a mental breakdown if I told her I became an atheist. Would I have lied to her and just pretended to be a Christian to prevent that pain? Oh. Thing is, you always don't know for certain whether that's going to happen. And if she finds out that I was pretending, it would make it worse. So I would say no. I'm going to go with no on this one. I wouldn't pretend. I wouldn't lie on purpose just to save pain in that case. But I do think that maybe in some situations that might actually be the right thing to do. It's like putting the medicine pill in some type of sugar cake and giving it to the kid. The kid thinks all they're doing is eating junk food, but really you're saving their life. So in one sense, you're lying to them about what you're doing or not being 100% truthful. You're in that boat with a girlfriend? You don't want my advice on that then. Because before you got here, I basically said don't be unequally yoked. Preachers are mad at you, Eric, because you tell them they're not doing what the scripture calls them to do. They teach, but they don't train. They don't train because they know now how to respond to the who reject what they teach. I think I know what you mean. Yeah, Eric, you're going to get in trouble if you keep that up. You don't tell the head honchos of the church board what to do, how to do things. Depends what type of church structure it is. But there's a lot of politics in church. Then you got the money. There's always about 2, 3, or 4 people in the church who actually pays for the church. And you gotta keep those people happy. Eric's nodding his head right now. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. If I played the role of an atheist, I would destroy the vast majority of men behind the pulpit. It's not because Christianity is false, but because they don't know how to defend it. Well, the way I would defend Christianity is, I'm trying to think who. I would try my hardest to go the pragmatic route, the practical route with Christianity. And that's sort of like what Jordan Peterson's doing. But I would focus in on love. That's key. I would focus in on just the joy and the prospect of even a greater meaning and purpose. I would really, if I was a Christian trying to defend Christianity, I would really hit hard on that. I would be so gentle on these atheists. I would say, look, yeah, you got meaning and purpose. I understand that. I understand you find your own meaning, your own purpose. But I'm just saying to you, Doug, it could be so much more. It could be so much more. that's the kind of a tactic I think that would work best. But even then, you're still left with that problem of, it's like you can put yourself in positions to have belief revision, but you can't force people to believe things. JD says, my wife was a Catholic when we first met. Now she's a weak agnostic. She knew I was an atheist from the get-go. Ruckus says that he found Eric to be a bully. I actually don't. I'm not a good person to identify bullies because I don't get offended easily. So, like when Eric and I had an exchange the other day, some people might watch that and say Eric was a bully or whatever. I don't view it that way. I actually blame myself because we were in a rushed situation. Doug, my prior question about approaching Christianity with a strong academic perspective is based on why I accept the Christian model of reality, since it's a model that works out in academia. Yeah, Rob, I just think that's totally wrong. I really do. I actually don't think the core propositions of Christianity, I'm not talking about the deistic type stuff, but the core propositions of a man rising from the dead. Actually, Rob, let me ask you, do you believe that? Do you believe Jesus rose from the dead in physical form? Because I'm not even clear what type of Christian you are. But Mormons are as gentle as doves, but they buy lies nonstop. Yes, Eric, you're right. But I've met people, I've talked to them face to face, that in the moment of weakness, when they get a knock at the door and there's that Mormon face smiling at them, wouldn't you know it, like 6 months later, they're in the Mormon church. It's like that desperation. So the best way to convert me is you got to find me at my weakest, most desperate moment and show so much love that I can't refuse it. That's how most religions get people into the religion past the age of 30. Get them in or find them in a desperate situation and provide a solution of comfort and love. That's why you don't realize you're a bully. Well, there's some truth to that, because I try to put myself in other people's perspective in their shoes, because you can call me any name in the book and I'm not going to be offended. People can say almost anything they want to me. I'm not going to be offended. And I have to remind myself that most people are not that way. And this is the benefits of street epistemology. Like, you have to sometimes tiptoe up towards the Christian, because if you look them directly in the eye, they're like a deer and they'll run away, especially if they know you're an atheist. Yeah. If you're trying to pull someone away from the truth, that's mocking. Since you blame yourself, we can visit again. I haven't said no, Eric. I just haven't said yes either. I don't want you to blame yourself. But what would we talk about? Oh, Eric, in fact, why don't we... it's a simple question I can ask you right now. I don't know if did you see my... Yeah, you were there with Mike Winger. So you know the thought experiment question. Poof or drown, Eric? Poof or drown? I once called Doug Canadian. He got super offended. Yeah. Maybe we can do a show in person. Well, Eric, if we do a show in person, I have to put on pants. Unless you're that type of guy. That joke. I did that joke for, hey, Danny Harper. if you rewind the tape, I don't know how long you've been here, Danny, but I actually talked about Hebrew and brought up some Hebrew characters and said that those darn Christians mistranslated Isaiah 9, verse 6. You'd be proud of me. Now, on the same token, I still think that the Jews have a poor epistemology just like the Christians do, but I feel for the Jews how the Christians have bastardized the Old Testament. But what's my perspective of Judaism? Well, Danny, I love Fiddler on the Roof. Tradition. I love Seinfeld. And I love Larry David. So if I was to become a theist again, I told my wife this the other day, if I was to become a theist again, I'd probably become some type of liberal Jew or something. Or not liberal in the sense of tree-hugging, sandal-wearing, granola-crunching liberal, but, whatever. See you, Brian. Yeah, I don't know if it's the religion of Judaism or the culture of Judaism that I like. Like the whole idea of breaking plates at a wedding, like, that's great. But I understand the frustrations of Jews with Christians. I totally get that. Like, I'm surprised Jews are not more furious of how guys like the Apostle Paul just totally takes a knife to the Torah and just whoosh, whoosh. And Christians have no idea what I'm talking about right now. I don't really think, like, Eric, do you have any idea what I'm talking about right now when I say that? I really like to observe people's body language when they're getting the SE treatment. Yeah, we all, over 50% is nonverbal. And like with Mike Winger and Eric, if you're still here, if you play back the tape and watch your body language when you were talking to me, it was almost like you were on speed. But again, I don't know if it was because we were in a rush situation. If I were a rich man, da da da. Yeah, who doesn't like Fiddler on the Roof? I'd become a Jew just for that musical. When you teach morals to your children, do you use metaphors or logical reasoning? I just say, be nice, be kind. I would say, how would you feel that happened to you? I really don't think it's that complicated. Although some moral decisions are, but not at my kid's age. My dentist converted to Judaism just for the jokes. Rob says, Paul doesn't do that with the Old Testament. Don't be ridiculous. What Second Temple Jew? No, I'm talking... Yeah, Rob, I don't think you have any clue what I'm talking about. Danny Harper's, get someone in contact with Rob and let him know how the Apostle Paul just... Even the whole concept of total depravity is... And that there's no hope without the Spirit of God. And faith, it's just... Paul just bastardizes Judaism. And then just look at, Paul quotes the Old Testament, I don't know how many times, and gets it wrong. And again, I don't think Christians even realize this. I think, Rob, your mouth is open right now, and you're going, what's Doug talking about? What's Dog talking about? But if Danny Harper's here, he can even... Danny Harper, you're a practicing Jew, correct? I don't know, you look pretty nervous to me, Doug, when you were talking to Mike. I did? How so? I'm trying to think if I've ever been really nervous. I try as hard as I can if I feel like I've made a mistake to admit it. Rob, I'm not going to go into theology right now. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, just Google it. Like, seriously, just on Google type, did Paul, what word could you use? Did Paul misquote the Old Testament? And I know you don't agree with any of it, but at least you can get the other side. Or go to Tovia Singer's channel and go to his videos and type in Paul. You can get a flavor of some of it there. Since your wife is a believer, how have you reconciled your marriage around that? Yeah, I've already talked about this quite a bit, but basically by anything religious related, she initiates. I don't initiate. See you, JD. Have a good night. Adios. Don't Calvinists quote Paul constantly and talk about total depravity, Rob? Yes. Calvinism comes from Paul. If you read in the Gospels alone how you become a Christian, it's very works-based. If you read Paul, it's faith-based. And James. In fact, wasn't James almost not even in the original canon because of that? You have to give Winger some credit. He's good at fencing with you, Doug. I obviously don't agree with him, but he's good. What do you think makes him good at fencing? Or what do you mean by that? Calvinism comes from Beza. Okay, Rob. Like, seriously, I don't mean to be dismissive, but at some point I just have to, like, are we seriously going to talk about where Calvinism came from? All I'm asking you to do is, I made a claim out there that some people believe, I'm talking about Christians now, and Jews, I'm not talking about atheists, that some Jews out there think that Paul totally took a knife to the Torah and misrepresent the Torah. Now, whether you agree with that or not is irrelevant. The question is, the point is, you should be aware of these things and what these other people believe and why. I think he counters points quickly and speaks with confidence. Yeah, that's true. And he doesn't bloviate very much, unless it's a poof or drown question. But I do think that his laugh that he often does is a nervous laugh. Doug, my answer in your poof or drown question shows nothing. Here's why. Do you have any idea how many times I would have followed a course of action that someone more knowledgeable than I would have taken, and I would have been so wrong, even though my perspective... Well, can you at least answer the question first, though? Poof or drown? Let's assume it shows nothing, because I did not know the whole story. No, Eric, let's assume that the point of my question is totally bogus. Let's assume that it shows nothing. All I'm asking you is just answer, if God gave you the choice on how to execute justice through poofing or drowning, which one would you prefer? See, Eric, my daughter today, within 5 seconds, said poof. Like, why not? Like, why should babies drown? And she's 14 years old. How old are you, Eric? Poof or drown, Eric? Eric Loonsberry, not Eric S. And Rob, if you're aware of these things, then why do you say Well, no, I'm not going to get into it. So Eric Loonsberry, poof or drown? My point shows nothing. It's just a fun question. Just a meaningless, senseless, fun question. Poof or drown? If God said, hey, it's up to you, Eric. I'm going to give you the choice. The result's the same. Drowning, they die. Poofing, they're gone. Lounsbury. Okay. Sorry, I apologize. Poof or drown? See, my prediction is you will not answer this question. Oh, he did. Was that reverse psychology? That worked? Okay. Very good. Congratulations. You got 1,000 Pine points. Now, why would you poof rather than drown? Now my questions are starting to matter and show things. I'll tell my daughter that a Christian finally answered poof. Why would you say poof? Why do you prefer poof over drown? Is it because you don't want to see babies drown? I think that's a good reason to have that preference. If the point of drowning is to show how serious God is, isn't the idea that he will burn you a much better deterrent anyway? Yeah, see, Eric, there are a few questions, like very simple questions, like how would your life be different if you left Christianity? I honestly can predict your answers. It's going to be more or less fulfillment in life, meaning and purpose, the love you feel from Jesus, that personal relationship, right? Without that, you would feel that you would have less meaning and purpose, less fulfilling life. So Christianity gives you those things. But if those things could be replaced with something even better, imaginably, would you leave Christianity? And if not, why not? If this is the reason why you are a Christian, to get these things, and when I say get, I mean to receive the love of Jesus. If you could receive even bigger love, now I know in your mind that's impossible, but you are just a bunch of poofers. Yeah, so I think you're a Christian because of, like you said, that what we talked about, that personal relationship idea. But I don't think you have any way of knowing for certain, at least, whether that relationship is real or not. If you believe Jesus was here on earth and then went up, ascended into heaven, because heaven's up, by the way. Did you know that, Eric? Heaven's up. Just think about that for a second. Heaven is up. That alone should just cause doubt. But Jesus ascended up into the clouds. Now imagine he could come back, but not for the tribulation or anything like that, but just have a personal relationship with you, Eric, in the physical form as God in flesh. Wouldn't that be a lot better yet than the personal relationship you have now? You have very good reasons to know it's real. Name your best one. Unequally yoked? Yeah, skeptic. My wife's a Christian. I'm an atheist. If you're on the other side of the world, is it down? For some people. I still find it really hard to believe that there's people that stupid. Well, no, I guess not. You realize half the people in the world have an IQ below 100, roughly. See, Eric, I think I can predict your very good reason to know that your relationship is real is you would say, well, no, I'm not going to predict. Just in one sentence, type, is it experience or is it the Bible? Yeah, those are basically your two possible answers. So, Eric, is it your personal experience is your good reason to know it's real, or is it the Bible? There might be a third option, but because when you were 14, you said that, or 15, however old you were, that you investigated and went to a whole bunch of preachers and pastors and tried to find what's true or not. I really wonder, like, how much of contradictory or things that push against Christianity you investigated during that time. I don't know if, hey, a skeptic, you could have no education at all and still have a pretty high IQ. There's IQ tests that have no words or numbers in them, just all shapes. This is why there's such a controversy with IQ testing and when it comes to race and so forth, because you can test IQ with very minimal cultural baggage, like without using numbers or shapes, numbers or words. You can just use shapes and pattern recognition and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think you can increase your IQ, though, skeptic, and you can decrease it by watching some apologetic channels. I know the Christian faith is real because of the rock-solid evidence that when I believed it was reconciled to God, and now I know him personally. But what's the rock-solid evidence? And what's this reconciled to God thing? My guess it was a personal experience. Would you rather poof or drown Hitler? Great question. I'd drown that guy. Yeah. If you could go in a time machine and kill Hitler as a baby, now that's a better question. Baby Hitler, poof or drown. That's harder. Here's the thing, Doug. All the people in my life, even those who are not believers, will come on your show and say, I know God. Eric, that means nothing to me. Absolutely. Hopefully this doesn't offend you. But just think about how silly what you just said is. Now, don't take offense, but just for like 30 seconds, imagine I'm talking to Eric Malik from Pakistan, and he says, here's the thing, Doug, all the people in my life, even those who are not believers, will come on your show and say, I know Allah. What a ridiculous statement, is it not? Eric, all you have to tell me is your evidence the Bible, or is it personal experience, or both? Which one's more? Those are the two boxes they mostly fill in, right? Am I missing another box? So personal experience would be like a miracle or some unexplained coincidence. The Bible is, the evidence for the Gospels. Oh, there is a third box. The third box is like the moral arguments, but that's not Christianity. Or like the first cause arguments. Those things are for God or gods. That's not for Christianity directly. And I think you admit that if you've done any study. Yeah, I think if baby Hitler, I'd poof. Adult Hitler, I'd drown. So would you poof or drown PineCreek, Eric? What apologist would you like to chat to? Oh, great question, Joe. Joe Shrapnel. Have I seen you before? Your name doesn't look familiar, but welcome. Which apologists? Well, I like all the evangelical Protestant ones. So Tim Keller, I would really like to talk to. Because I think he would really struggle with some questions. See, the goal would be for my personal pleasure. If I wanted ratings and views, I would like well, he's not an apologist, but mega church pastors, Rick Warren and so forth. But I really think they're just old guys like Stanley, Charles Stanley. Yeah, it's these old timers. I'd love to talk to them. And MacArthur, what's his first name? Oh, and even guys like Charles Lawson and John Hagee, like those fire and brimstone guys, they would be a riot. They would give me personal entertainment. Lycona? Yes, I would. Good point, John Rood. I would like to talk to Lycona. Some of the things Lycona writes on Twitter, I'm just like, what? This guy has a PhD and he's writing this stuff? Doug, even if there is evidence for the Bible, it doesn't make any sense that Yahweh concealed it for some archaeologists to dig it while ordinary people like you and I struggle. Well, yeah. Well, think about this. Here's even a more amazing thought. During that time period, we were led to believe that miracles happened often in the Gospels. And God can do anything. Yes, Bill, I would talk to Frank Turek. Saitan Brunke, yeah, I would talk to him as well. Actually, I think Saitan would be a blast to talk to, more so than Frank Turek. And I don't think it would be bad. Like, I don't think it would be cringeworthy. It would be... I think I could actually get him to have a fun conversation. But what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. The God of the universe, who can see the future, could he have not made an iPhone or an iPad 2,000 years ago? In fact, couldn't this God make 12 of them, give one to each of his disciples and say, look, I know you don't believe this, but I'm going to die and rise from the dead. Take these phones. Here's the record button. Here's a charger, portable charger. This is how you film. I know this looks weird and you have no idea what this is, but I want you to point this at me and record everything. And then I want you to each put this in a box, send it to different countries of the world, and make sure it's in a watertight box, and blah, blah, blah. Like, can you imagine? The God of the universe could have very easily done that. And so we would have at least audio and video evidence for the resurrection of Jesus or the life of Jesus. Have you talked to Matt Slick? No. Not directly. I think I had one Google Hangout a long time ago, maybe briefly. But how do you know that, Doug? You know, alligator tars, the way I would talk to Saitan Bruggencade is the exact same way I would talk to guys like Darth Dawkins. I would bow to their greatness and say, you're right, I am not worthy to make any claims, but do you mind, your royalty, if I could ask a few questions? That's all you have to do. Just don't feel any need to defend yourself to these guys. Just say, yeah, you're right, I have no basis for morality and intelligibility and all these things. Just give it to them. Yeah. Because they really don't believe that. They're talking to you. That's evidence that they realize that you're a thinking, conscious human being. And just let them believe you have no basis for anything. It's okay. Don't be defensive about it. The way you get precepts is you pound them on these little tiny things in the Bible. Things like poofing and drowning. By the way, this is the strategy Hitchens use all the time with guys like William Lane Craig. It's like, you really believe that? Like zombies came out of the graves? Here you could have a PhD philosopher say, yeah, I believe there were zombies 2,000 years ago. Like, it's game over at that point. Are any of your old pastors available to chat? My old pastors? I don't think so. I don't even know if some of my old pastors know I've left Christianity. Did Eric leave? Yeah, skeptic, I think it's okay just to let them talk. He says he doesn't do Bible studies with atheists. Okay, then if that's the case, I would just ask him, what do I need to do to be saved? Oh, pre-subs hate that question. They love it and they hate it. Because they cannot not answer that question. This is like the gold mine of questions for the Christian to hear a non-believer say, what must I do to be saved? And then they'll give you an answer, which differs depending on what type of Christian you are, by the way. But the precept will tend to say, well, repentance is the first step, which a lot of Christians don't agree with, by the way. But then they would admit that you can't repent unless God does something in you first, because you're totally depraved. That's how you talk to a precept. That is a contradiction. No, it's not. It's a friction within their worldview. They're commanded to obey God by saying repent, knowing full well within their worldview, their theology, that you don't have the ability to do so unless God does something in you first. Right? God's either going to elect you or not, which is known before the creation of time, which makes that God look like a dick because he created people for their destruction. But we don't know that, so that's how they kind of get around that. So only God knows that. Yeah, but when people say I'm repressing or denying, that doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, he's a Greg Bonson fan. Many of your comments and questions clearly show you have no idea what the intention of God is and why he does and doesn't do things. You need to first understand the fact of God before you seek the ways and whys of God. I'm still listening, waiting for your answer on what's this rock solid evidence. And I gave you two choices, two boxes to put in. All you have to do is type, is it a personal experience or is it the Bible? I'm talking about Christianity here. It's not that hard. In fact, we can get through this conversation very quickly if you just, you don't even have to write full words. Just E for experience, B for Bible. Because I'm talking about Christianity now. I'm not talking about a deistic God. So let's just even assume a God exists, but why are you a Christian? And I think any answer you give would fit in one of those two boxes. So which is it? Personal experience, or is it the Bible? And I realize it's both, but which one is it more? This is another thing I've noticed with Christians, is they don't like to keep things simple. They have to nuance it and make things complicated a lot of times, not all the time. Because once you simplify, remember Mike Winger was saying this exact same thing. He really doesn't like it when he talks for 3 or 4 minutes and then I simplify what he says in like 3 seconds. And it's like, because if you make things simple, it's easier to see the problems within it. It has to be nuanced in order for it to be believable. So Eric, I'm just going to assume that God exists for the sake of argument, and tell me, what's this rock solid evidence for why you're a Christian? That you have this personal relationship with Jesus. Are you doing something else, Eric, or why is this taking so long? I'm guessing it's personal experience, and I'm guessing this is why it's taking so long, because you don't want to admit that. Sure, Silhouette's a cumulative case, but it's usually one more than the other. Eric's either a Christian because he finds the evidence of the Gospels in the New Testament, the Bible, overwhelmingly powerful, or the main thing is that he's had some amazing personal experience that it has to be the God of the New Testament, of the Bible. And I'm sure it's a little bit of both, but it's usually one over the other. Like, Eric, did you see demons cast out of people? Is that why you believe? Did you see someone healed from a terminal illness? Is that why you believe? Were you in your room one night and Jesus appeared to you? Is that why you believe? Is it because there were 500 eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection? Is that why you believe? Let me help you out, Eric. You have to leave your family, but you know your family's starting to doubt. It's not experience, it's evidence of the Bible. Okay. So all you, like 2 minutes ago, 3 minutes ago, all you had to type is B for Bible and we would have moved on by now. Okay, so it's the Bible. Now, Eric, you picture a loved one in your head, and your loved one is about to leave you forever. And you're sensing they have doubts, huge doubts, and you're sensing that your loved one is going to leave Christianity. But it's like a situation where it can't be stopped. You're going to be parted forever. And you have one last thing to say to your loved one about the evidence of the Bible. So if there was one thing about the evidence of the Bible that you could give your loved one before they leave, that you think is the most powerful reason for them to stay in, stay strong, run the good race, what would it be? Actually, I think that's a question I'm going to use more often to avoid the cumulative case argument. Because once someone says it's a cumulative case, they're basically saying, let's play whack-a-mole all night. I'm tired of whack-a-mole. So, Eric, your choices now are prophecies, eyewitness testimony. Remember, you got one thing to say to your loved one before you leave them to help bolster their faith, their confidence in Jesus Christ. What's that one thing that you're going to say just before you leave them? to help save their soul, keep them in the faith. The fact that God said his word is life, and it is, and all who's part of my life will agree. Huh? That's supposed to convince someone that it's true? Isn't that basically saying because the Bible says so? Eric, you're never going to evangelize effectively with that answer. I'm sorry, but I'm just telling you the truth here. You're basically saying to your loved one who's about to leave Christianity, and you're giving them this last thing, and it's just because God said so in his word. They're just going to say, no, the Bible just says so. Like, that doesn't mean it's true. I'm sorry, Eric. That's the best you got. Even if you said prophecy, I got something to work with. I find that many apologists use the cumulative case without mentioning that Frank Turek always starts off with arguments for deism, then works towards Christianity. Yeah, my advice is always start with theism, then go work backwards. I actually have no problem. Like, Eric, if you were to come on my channel and you wanted to talk first cause, I would question you. But if you want to posit that's more likely than not that there's some type of deistic God out there, so be it. That doesn't... But to go from there to eternal life and a man rise from the dead, that's a long walk. No, it's not, because it says so. If you read a book that tells you how to build a time machine and you build it and it works... Oh. Okay, Eric, can you predict what question I'm going to ask you next? When you live contrary to the scripture, it always leads to destruction. Always, Eric? Always? And when you say destruction, do you mean here on earth or somewhere else? My guess is you're going to say both, but definitely in eternal life. But Eric, I'm really going to try to help you here. This is to make you a better Christian. You shouldn't answer that way, and here's why. Because you said, if you read a book that tells you how to build a time machine and you build it, it works, you know it's true. When you say works, you know it works, and it works. Do you realize that Muslims would say the exact same thing? That their religion works for them, and so therefore they know it's true? You would laugh at that, would you not? So why shouldn't I laugh at what you said? That's a horrible answer. A horrible answer. You're basically saying that pragmatically it helps me live my life, so therefore it has to be true. That the ontology behind it, the source of it, has to be true. It could be something else that's working, and you're just attributing it to God, and really it's not God. That's a horrible answer, and you don't even realize it. When you live contrary to the scripture, it always leads to destruction. Okay, if you found a worldview that doesn't lead to destruction, would you reconsider yours? And again, a Muslim would say the same thing. Your worldview leads to destruction. Now, if you're talking about earthly destruction, that you're not as a productive member of society, then your answer is even worse. Let me walk that walk and see what you say. Yeah, I figured it'd be both eternity. But every time I ask you a question, Eric, and you answer, I want you to get in the habit of immediately thinking of someone in a different religion than yours giving the exact same answer, and then see how you would react to it. Just keep practicing doing that. And I think you'll find over time you're going to have less answers. Because Because there are so many other religions in this world that work for people, that make sense for people, that save them. Eric, do you realize how many people have transformed their life in Islam? Do you realize how many people's lives have been transformed from Mormonism? That they were drunkards, drug addicts. They became a Mormon and now they're clean. So that earthly destruction is now gone. It worked for them, Eric. Does that mean Mormonism is true? Like, really think about how absolutely stupid your answer was. Now, I'm not saying this to offend you. I'm saying your answer's stupid, not you. But please, you got to think. You got to really think about what you're saying here. It's a matter of something impossible working. Okay, what do you mean by that? What is impossible that's working? You're talking about a man rising from the dead now? Only in the Christian faith is the impossible possible. What do you mean? What is this impossible thing you speak of? Reconciliation of sin, maybe? I know what you're thinking. I'm right? Redemption? Is that what you're thinking of? Stop asking mocking questions, you evil atheists. No, I really got to help you here, Eric. I think I can make you a better Christian. Miracles, prophecy. Okay, remember like 15 minutes ago I said, is it E for experience, B for Bible? And if it's Bible, just put P for prophecy. It's like, how many prophecies? Let's say there's, just make it simple, 100 prophecies, Eric. How many of them would you have to be convinced are not real prophecies or can be explained in a different way before you stop using prophecy as a reason? Like, if you found just one prophecy in the Bible that you became convinced, you know what? I was wrong about this prophecy. It's not really a prophecy. Like in Daniel, are you aware that many scholars believe Daniel was written after a lot of those prophecies? Like, if you became convinced of that, would you leave Christianity? Is it over at that point? I'm not sure if you're talking to me, Eric, about understanding the difference between Christianity and other faiths. This is, to answer your question, Eric, yes, in general, I do understand the difference between Christianity and other faiths. But again, does the fact that Christianity is unique make it true or make it more likely to be true? The fact that Christianity is unique, does it make it more likely that it's true? That's a rhetorical question, right? Of course not. All religions have unique aspects to it. You clearly do not, because if you would not relate Christianity. Eric, this is how, okay, please don't take this the wrong way, but I'm going to be very honest with you. This is not how an intelligent person speaks. Well, I guess you have to take that the wrong way. Because you are so ensconced in your religion, you can't even see outside your bubble for 1 second. Because you said you clearly do not, because if you did, you would not relate Christianity. You're basically saying, my religion's so good, how dare you even compare it to other religions? But don't you realize other people, at least some people in other religions, say the same thing? It's like, remember what I told you to practice? Practice in your mind before you make a comment. Imagine someone of a different religion saying the exact same thing. And then you'd be tempted to laugh at it. Okay, now imagine you're that person being laughed at. Let me demonstrate the difference. No difference to make it true. The evidence makes, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Let's talk about the evidence. Let's talk about the evidence. What's the most convincing evidence? Is it prophecies? Are we back to prophecies? Is it Zechariah 9:9? Is it Daniel 9? Is it Isaiah 53? Is it Psalm 22? How many of those would I have to chop off the block and give you possible naturalistic explanations for it before you would stop believing? Well, I'm giving you, Eric, I'm giving you options. You don't actually need to type much. Like, see how intoxicated spoken atheist. Yeah, I don't. Eric, I'm well aware of most of the messianic prophecies, and they're not compelling to me. I'm totally aware of all the New Testament evidence, the eyewitness accounts and so forth. I don't believe that those were eyewitness accounts. There's not one person other than Paul who says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. From here, I'm writing this at such and such a date, and I saw the risen Savior." Do you realize there's nothing like that in the New Testament for Jesus? A resurrected Jesus, other than Paul, and then that's a vision? And although, and Paul actually didn't even say when he wrote it, but my guess is it's personal experience more than Bible for you. Because you really seriously need to think about your answers before you say them. Okay, Eric, feel free to be blunt. Because while you're in this bubble that you're just assuming that Christianity is far superior than any other religion, you can't even for a second imagine it might not be. And so for when I use the outsider test of faith, when I talk about other religions, it's just like, what is this you speak of? Other people saying what I'm saying? Like, that can't be. And I agree with you, Eric. I think Mormonism's false. I think Islam's false. I think Hinduism's false, the core propositions. We're agreed on all of that. And I don't know when you got here, Eric, but I showed some prophecies. Why the one about Isaiah 9 verse 6. I think in like 5 minutes I showed there's big reasons to doubt that prophecy, because it was actually written in the Hebrew in the present tense, in the past tense, not the future. I'm waiting for you to be blunt with me, Eric. There's an irrefutable proof of God. You may not know it. I can show it. Every atheist have debated, have agreed they cannot refute it. If you don't believe evidence that is so clear. Are you talking about God or Christianity? Other evidence for other things. So now I have a feeling, my prediction is now you're talking cosmological argument. All you have to do is type one word, and I'll know what you're talking about. Eric, let me give you a piece of advice. When you say things like, I debated Dan Barker and he couldn't refute it, I debated George Smith and he couldn't refute it, it makes you look weak. It makes you look needy. It makes you look defensive. You don't have to talk about all your conquests. No, Eric's not a troll. Because I talked to him face to face. He just thinks he's right, and there's no chance he could be wrong. Eric, what's the God proof? Is it, am I right? Is it now a philosophical argument we're moving to? Is it the cosmological? Is it the first cause? Is that where you're going? Doug, do you know why the Jews don't include Jesus in their reindeer games? Why? Argument from incredulity, incoming in 3, 2. Hey, Reed, when did you get here? Okay, now I'm starting to think you are being a troll. Do I want the proof? I've been asking it for a long time. You don't have to write a long sentence. Just, I've heard, I think, all of them. So all you have to do is say one word and I'll know what you're talking about. Maybe a couple words. Is it contingency? Is it fine-tuning? Do you have a picture of God in your wallet? It is first cause. See? But it's a variation of first cause. Okay, Eric. It's a first cause argument. Eric, did Dan Barker and all these guys ask you this about first cause? Couldn't it be true, Eric, could it be true that your God that you believe exists does in fact exist, and yet he did not create the universe? Is there anything logically impossible about what I just said? That the God you believe in actually does exist, but yet he did not create the universe? I know the cosmological argument. Everything that begins to exist as a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. That cause is God, and Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus loves me, this I know. The last part I added. But Eric, the question I just asked you is the cosmological nail in the coffin that, again, I don't think you'll answer. You cannot answer that question I just asked. Honestly, I don't think. Let me repeat my question. Is it logically possible for your God to exist and he not create the universe? How do you know I don't know your argument? How do you know I didn't listen to you when you talked to Matt Dillahunty? Or I've listened to a couple of your debates. I forget the other guy's name. I don't think it was Dan Barker. Type it in, Eric. I'm guessing it's like 3 or 4 premises and a conclusion. Or is it more nuanced? Premise 1. Let's see it. But the problem with the cosmological argument is, besides, we don't know if everything that begins to exist has a cause and whether the universe actually did begin to exist, big U instead of small u. Besides all those problems, you have to then come up with a way to show that this God desired to create the universe. That's a huge one, because this God could exist and said, no, the universe coexisted with me. It's always been. Why do I need to get a pen and paper if you're typing? I have a mouse here. I can highlight, copy, and paste. I'm going to give you, hey, Reed, is Cam Spires available yet? I want to talk to him. But you need to hurry up here, Eric. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Because you've been stalling so much. If you can learn anything here tonight, Eric, it's to think before you type. I mean, when I say think, I mean put your answers in the lips of a Muslim or a Hindu and then see what you think of them. Existence does not come from non-existence. How do you know that? A fire could never be started by a married bachelor. They don't exist. If that's true, fire cannot be started by a married bachelor. A married bachelor doesn't exist. Something exists. This so far is exactly the same cosmological argument. Don't see any differences. This is a deistic argument. It has nothing to do with Jesus yet. But yeah, I realize it's not the purpose of the cosmological argument. Eric, why don't you just put in, well, how is this different than the typical cosmological argument? Because everybody knows well, not everybody. Something is eternal, not claiming what at this time it could be the universe. Okay, the universe is not eternal. Okay, that's a premise, that's a claim. Keep going. The universe could have multiple definitions too. Let's just let him finish. So far, nothing you've said is different than the typical cosmological argument. And while you're typing your conclusion or the next premise, it's like, $100 says this has nothing to do with why you're a Christian. Especially when you were 14. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you knew the cosmological argument when you were 14, and that's why you became a Christian. Whatever is eternal is the source of all that is not. Otherwise, existence came from non-existence. Whatever is eternal is the source of all that's not. Can two things be eternal? And one be the cause and not the other one? But I'll let you finish. Whatever is eternal transcends the universe. Unless the universe is itself eternal. Oh my goodness, this is bad. Whatever is eternal has all power. Whoa, that's a nice claim. Whatever is eternal is intelligent. Ooh, that's even a bigger claim. Is this real life? You're just taking the cosmological argument and you're adding more claims to it. Couldn't it conceivably true? Is there anything logically contradictory with a all-knowing, all-intelligent God creating the universe? Like, couldn't a dumb God create the universe? It kind of almost looks like a dumb God created the universe if you actually look at it. A lot of wasted space and problems with our plumbing. Like I'm 47. I'm starting to It's starting to burn when I pee, Eric. It's starting to burn. Tell me that's a intelligent designer? Creator? Oh yeah, sin problem. Yeah, I've got that covered. Which do I need proof for? I will give you the proof. I want the proof. I want, why couldn't there be more than one eternal existence? Why couldn't there be more than one eternal existence? No, one of your things was that whatever's eternal, number 5, whatever is eternal is the source of all that is not. I'm asking, could there be 2 things that are eternal? And number 6, you say whatever is eternal transcends the universe. What if the universe is eternal? Can it transcend itself? You realize how bad this is, Eric? I'm reading your premises off the sheet and I'm asking questions about them. And number 6, you say, whatever is eternal transcends the universe. And I'm asking, what if the universe is itself eternal? Or what if there's 2 things that are eternal that it transcends the universe? Like, have you thought about these things? And then number 5, you said whatever is eternal is the source of all that is not. Well, that's just a claim. Otherwise, existence came from non-existence. Okay, but I'm going to ask a very simple question that maybe you've never been asked before. Could there be 2 eternal things that is the source of all that is not? And maybe one eternal thing created some things and another created thing didn't, or created different things. You see the problems here? You're just making claims willy-nilly. In fact, why couldn't I use this argument to say that there's exactly 13 gods that are eternal? But I think instead of, it's like so ridiculous, Eric. Like, what you need to do, my advice to you, Eric, is oh, I understand, Eric. Yeah. Yeah, because the YouTube algorithms thinks you're a troll because you're typing so much. I understand. Not your fault. But Eric, you do realize that the general cosmological argument that you just added to, you just threw on some claims. Thanks, Silhouette. Kids going to Applebee's. I don't even have to do any work. All you have to do is, for yourself, just, I'm sure you know, I think you know the points against the cosmological argument. And just, so you say, okay, here's the cosmological argument, here's the points against it. I find the arguments for it more compelling, and this is why I believe. Is that basically where we're going to go to? Say, like, even my questions about why couldn't there be 2 eternal beings, you're going to say something like, well, if there's 2 eternal beings, then one is not as good as another, and that contradicts my other premise about intelligence. There only can be one supremely intelligent, and so forth. I can predict with a high degree of confidence how this is going to go. But again, I don't think this is why you're a believer. I think this is why maybe you're a debater. Okay. Is this another 3-hour stream I did? Oh, man. 2 in a row. Okay, guys, have a great night. I'm going to go talk about Westworld with my friends. See you next time.